everyone, I'm Simon of the Loki Project. We have some questions from the community that I've been instructed to answer today, so let's get started. What challenges do you see facing Loki in 2, 5 or 10 years from now? I think I'm going to pick one of those times. I think I'll pick 5 years. I think in about 5 years time, Loki should have gotten to the point where all of the technical difficulties are long in the past, and we've started to see a lot of development come to the project. We're starting to see a lot of snaps and a lot of developers using it for privacy-centric applications, and I think in that case, I think bandwidth is probably going to be the biggest challenge of the Loki network, just because of the limited ability of emissions to actually be able to scale up the number of nodes. You can only do that so much. We proved that quite extensively in our crypto economics papers that we released a few weeks ago. We may actually have to increase the standard of bandwidth on different nodes, but I don't really know how that's going to go. It's quite difficult to predict whether or not that's going to be required, but we'll see. I think in 5 years the project could look dramatically different to how we think it's going to look. So, hard to say. When Binance? Ask Binance. Are you targeting bigger exchanges? Loki deserves a better exchange. I agree, Loki does deserve a bigger exchange, but the process just isn't that straightforward, unfortunately. I can't really say a lot on this, unfortunately. My hands are quite tied here. I mean, the best thing that you can do if you're interested in getting Loki listed on a larger exchange is just to continue to support Loki. Being a vocal member of the community, telling your friends about us, sharing us within your own networks, and of course directly contacting the exchanges in question is always great. But yeah, I think at the moment, because of the limited liquidity and volume that we see on the 2 exchanges that we do have ourselves listed on, it's not very encouraging. So I don't think that without spending more money than we can afford, we're going to see a very large exchange without some major support from our community. So it's really partially up to you, but it's mostly up to the exchange in question. So, what's the best way to invest into Loki? Mining, service nodes, or otherwise? It really depends what is available to you. I mean, if you already have mining hardware, that's obviously one of the quickest and easiest ways to get involved, is to point your hash power at Loki. It's especially good for AMD cards. I personally have 3 1070s pointed at it all the time, but I think service nodes are definitely going to be the long-term choice. So if you can save up that amount to get a service node, you'll be one of the main beneficiaries of the future emissions scheme. So that's definitely something that I would look into, and I personally plan on running a couple myself. Loki's doing amazing things for the deep and dark web and net neutrality. But right now, this will be quite niche. What does the Loki team plan to do to reach the crypto masses? I think you've sort of answered your own question. It is quite niche, and I think it's quite difficult to break into new markets with no established product and no established track record of actually being successful. So I think the bigger question here is, are we going to be able to be successful within the niche? Because mixnets are very popular. By all metrics. As far as a web application goes, Tor is very popular indeed. There are terabytes and terabytes of data being pushed through that network every minute, every second, I don't know, but it's a lot of data. We've been testing some Tor nodes here to get an assessment of what bandwidth requirements might be, and we do several terabytes a week on a single node. And there's 8,000 nodes, so that's a lot of data moving through it and a lot of usage. The real question is whether or not we can actually tap into that and prove ourselves as being a better solution than what's currently out there. And if we can do that, then I think it's a question of how can we educate the wider public, not just the crypto masses, about privacy and what it means, and how Loki can become a part of the suite of tools that they use to protect themselves and protect their data and their money, of course. Can the Loki team please elaborate on their vision for token coin economics? What will create demand for the coins generated by miners and service node operators? This is a good question. Since we're not doing the rune scheme anymore, where people can pay for a rune in order to use the system, we have a slightly different perspective on what the currency will actually be used for. The way I see it is, Loki is going to become an integral part of LokiNet. And LokiNet is the true compelling thing that's going to draw people to this initially. there are some projects out there that are also working in the private networking space, but they're all pay to play. You, as a user, typically have to either possess the coins or pay directly with the coins to use these mixnets. And I'm sorry, but this is just not going to work when free alternatives have existed for over a decade now. What we're planning to do is, with the free mixnet, we're using that to encourage people to use the system. And within this system, we're going to be able to do things like integrate the wallet directly into the browser experience and use JavaScript hooks to be able to directly call to that wallet. So building things like marketplaces within this Loki ecosystem is going to be very straightforward for developers. And for customers and merchants, you're going to be able to send Loki in under 5 seconds with Blink. This is big news because it means that no longer do we have to wait around for 20 confirmations before we know something's gone through. We can get the same speeds as PayPal, as the regular credit card experience, except the entire thing is private, and that, as far as I'm aware, hasn't really been achieved to any great lengths before. In the future, what will drive demand for Loki tokens other than people looking to accumulate enough for a secure node? This is a great point. A lot of masternode coins out there are entirely predicated on the fact that you can get high returns, but what they don't realize is those high returns are fueled purely by inflation. So what you're actually doing is taxing all of the new incoming people as you go along. It's sort of Ponzi scheme like. It's really not very attractive, and these coins often go to zero months after launching, and there's still quite a few of them that reach the top of these masternode websites where they're like, 1,000% a month or something ridiculous like that. They just drive themselves into the ground because the demand just can't possibly keep up with the increasing supply. It is literally like a Ponzi scheme. So the question is completely valid. Like, there has to be demand for Loki tokens outside of the desire for people to own service nodes. And I think this is going to come directly from its usage as a currency. Loki is doing things that no other privacy cryptocurrency is presently able to achieve. And it's certainly not being integrated in such an integral way into an advanced mixnet like the one that we're trying to develop. So I think that the value of Loki is very much similar to the value of Monero and Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies that have actually generated real-world trading. It's a real-world trading currency. It's not used to fuel online smart contracts like Ethereum is. It's actually used as a means of payment. What advantage or use case exists for service node apps over decentralized apps using a masternode, or none at all? I think what the question might be asking is, what are the use cases for snaps as opposed to DApps, decentralized apps? So snaps are very different to DApps. Don't get them confused. Snaps are just normal web applications, like your Facebook, your Twitter. They're both examples of a web application. So they're just like those. The difference is that they operate entirely within LokiNet, and it allows them to operate and exist without actually exposing their IP address to either the endpoint within LokiNet or the client, and vice versa. So when I connect to let's say there's a version of Twitter that sits within LokiNet, and what I can do is I can send the request to connect to it, and it can respond back to me. But I never have to know the server's IP address, keeping it safe from things like DDoS or from being targeted directly. And it never knows my IP address because I connect to it through multiple hops, which protects me against metadata collection. So this is a really awesome feature for privacy-centric applications. Decentralized apps typically mean apps that run on a blockchain somewhere, like a smart contract. But the definition is constantly broadening because people are realizing that running things entirely within blockchains is actually not super useful. In fact, it can be really detrimental, especially for privacy preserving features. You do not want data sitting on a blockchain for all of time. So things like homomorphic encryption and whatever else, very interesting ideas, but I don't know really what the advantage of doing that is. How do you get onto a larger exchange, i.e. Binance or hitbtc? Do you have to hand over an amount of Loki for them to begin to use it on their exchange? If so, where would that be given from? So getting into the nuts and bolts of how exchange listings work, every exchange is different. Every exchange has their own policies about who they accept, why they accept them, how much they require in payment, what they require payment in. Some of them you have to pay the amount in the token itself. Some of them you have to pay in Bitcoin. Some of them you have to pay them directly in USD. Some of the bigger ones you don't have to pay them at all, which is really nice. The process is really different for each exchange, and it's really up to them. That's sort of a non-answer, I know, but that's how it is. When Moon. Do you have information about an iOS wallet? Yes, I do. As far as I understand, Cake Wallet is working on a Loki integration into their own wallet. So as soon as that's done, we will notify the community and we will let you know. What kind of apps do you think can be built on Loki? As far as snaps go, I think the possibilities are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. We're thinking about some new tools and utilities we can bundle with Loki to make it even more useful. Some of the things that I see us working on are things like a dark social media, so that people can use a censorship resistant and very difficult to block platform that protects their privacy at the same time. I mean, one of the best examples of this is people trying to use Twitter in Egypt and Turkey during times of political instability and being unable to do so because governments like shutting these things down as soon as they realize they're being used against them. So that's the sort of thing that I want to build, but I think there's plenty of marketplaces and forums and all sorts of stuff that can be built on this, and the fact that it's got probably what will probably become the most effective decentralized private messenger out there, alongside this anonymous cryptocurrency that can be spent in under 5 seconds, I think the possibilities really start to expand quite rapidly. Besides the Loki Messenger, do you have another service in mind in the long term? Yes, we have a few services in mind. We're working on a naming scheme, we're working on a private key management scheme, and we're working on browser integrated wallets as well. And all of this comes together to be able to create a lot of different apps within the Loki ecosystem. And I think once it's clear to developers what snaps are and what they are capable of, it'll be a widely used tool. We haven't really planned anything that's going to affect the protocol itself, which is nice. Things should stay fairly stable. The messaging service is probably one of the biggest changes to this mixnet that hasn't been done before. And that alone can be used to extend the functionality of a lot of apps within the ecosystem itself. But really, anything is possible on this. Anything that requires privacy as a core feature, they're really going to benefit from the design of the mixnet. As always, if you have any other questions, we're always available, especially on Discord, myself in particular, but on our Telegram as well. If you want to find out more, you can always go to Loki.network, and see you next time.